As you know, I do quite a few videos for the new starters to try and encourage new guys and girls to the sport. Today is going to be focused on looking after your newly acquired airgun. Hello and welcome to AAR on Air. Well, today we're in the workshop, as it were, and it's all going to be about care and maintenance. Now, before I get stuck in, I just want to make it quite clear: care and maintenance, not tuning and general messing about with them until they're no longer as they should be and beggared. Because I have recently seen so many guns that are being returned and claimed to be faulty and not fit for purpose by the customers, and when they're returned it is quite evidently user error, and there was nothing wrong with the gun other than what has been done, or in some cases not done, to it whilst in the hands of the new owner. So the first part is care. And putting it simply, that means taking care of your gun and not abusing, mistreating or generally neglecting it. You're going to love some of the examples I'm going to go through, and I can assure you they are all real and have all happened within the last 12 months. Hopefully showing you how not to do it will help show you how you should do it, so to speak. First up is a full-on neglect. This example is one of a brand new gun that within around 4 months of ownership has been left in a damp environment, used outside in the wet, not wiped down before putting it away, and as you can see, there is surface rust all over it. And whilst this may not necessarily affect the internal barrel and its accuracy, it's starting to get that way. Apart from which, it does look pretty awful and speaks volumes of its owner. Whilst we're talking about water, let's also talk about dirt. Because lying it down in mud, dirt or dust is likely to create problems very quickly as grip gets into the seals and mechanism. Then that smooth action your gun started out with will soon lose its appeal, and the gun will get blamed for not working correctly. As always, care in the form of prevention is often better than constant maintenance and the possible need to be stripping the gun down to cure the issues. If nothing else, a wipe down when you get home is a very good idea. Now, one of my favourite mistakes that people make is multiple loading. I suppose I should justify that comment by saying favourite, as in most popular and quite unbelievably really, and mistake as in quite avoidable and often unbelievable as to how many times the action is immediately repeated. You see, guns often have multi-shot magazines, and these are pre-loaded up with pellets, and then each one is individually loaded into the breech each time you cock the gun. At this point, the loaded gun should be shot, then cocked again when needed, and the next pellet is loaded into the breech. Some magazines will automatically prevent you from loading 2 pellets into the barrel, but some simple magazines don't. Hence, it is possible to cock the gun time and time again, and each time this happens, another pellet is pushed into the barrel. Now, if this happens with, say, a couple of pellets, then the chances are pulling the trigger and releasing the air is likely to be enough to fire 2 pellets out at once. Hopefully. Now here's the rub. If your gun is down on power or the air in the PCP has been taken too low, then that may not clear the barrel, and cocking the gun to fire it again will add a 3rd pellet to the proceedings, reducing the chances of them coming out even more. And yes, you guessed it, people will cock it again and again and again. Heck, They'll even drop another magazine into the gun and keep trying. And yes, believe it or not, they will even put a third full magazine in and keep trying. The record down at Vector Air is 32 pellets stuck in one barrel. Wow. And when they get rammed that heavily into the barrel, they merge into each other, so they're almost unrecognisable as individual pellets. So 32 pellets, I kid you not. So if you think you've got one stuck in the barrel, start by removing the magazine so no more can go into the barrel. Try firing again at a safe target and see if you can hear the pellets strike the target area. If not, then make sure the gun is not cocked and it's in safe mode. Then try shining your light down the end of the barrel and see if you can see the light at the other end. If you can, then there's a good chance it's clear. If not, then you will most likely have at least one pellet stuck in the barrel. Alcohol can often be an influencing factor in the situation, in which case, please don't drink and shoot. It isn't a good combination at any time, really. The other issue is usually a complete lack of experience, but surely common sense would say if you haven't heard a pellet hit the target for the last 30 shots, something is surely amiss. If you do get to this situation, then you really only have a couple of choices. The first one is to rod them out, in which case you're going to need something like this, which is a multi-length caliber-specific set of rods that screw together, and then you can, with a small amount of force, push the jammed pellet safely from out of the barrel. If, however, you have put a full magazine or more down there, then you will probably need to take it to a gunsmith to get it cleaned out safely. It is also possible to get pellets jammed in the barrel if you're using the wrong ammunition, such as slugs, because these are really designed for FAC guns and are not really suitable for sub 12 and are quite likely to get stuck in the barrel, because sub 12 just doesn't have the kick and the power needed to fire them out cleanly. As a rough rule of thumb, slugs, as good as they are really not suitable for sub 12 foot-pound guns. Whilst we're talking pellets getting jammed in guns, I've also seen quite a few rifles where the pellets have become stuck in the back of the bolt housing and jammed everything up. This is often a much more complex job to rectify and is mostly caused by not seating the pellets into the magazine correctly, allowing them to fall backwards into the rear of the gun when you're cocking it. Certainly this happens if you are cocking it with the barrel pointing upwards. So, as a best practice, always 1, seat your pellets correctly in the magazine, and 2, cock the gun either level or pointing downwards. Incidentally, I haven't seen it happen on one of these BSAs yet. Oh, and don't leave the bolt open. Again, this is likely to be a return to the gunsmith to get it repaired. Finally, whilst on the topic of pellets, be careful of long pointed pellets that can often protrude further than the magazine and will become damaged when cycling and loading from the magazine. So, check the suitability of the pellets before you start loading up with ammunition into your gun and trying to shoot it. And please don't be tempted to use old oxidized pellets you happen to have found lying around, or steel darts that have been given to you by your dear old granddad. They won't do the gun a lot of good at all, and they really aren't likely to be accurate either. I think that has just about covered off the pellet issue. Now let's look at stocks. Again, you just won't believe what some people do to their gun stocks. I recently saw a polymer gun stock that was curved and naturally wasn't particularly easy to shoot accurately, unless of course you were trying to shoot round corners. What the guy had done was to lean the gun up against a wall, but it was in front of a heater, so you can imagine the rest. But be warned, even a wooden gun that has maybe been used outside in the wet, then put in front of heat, wood will naturally warp. Again, on the subject of stocks, if you do have a beautiful walnut or laminate stock, using a gun rest or maintenance centre is always a good idea to prevent any knocks and bangs and dents. When you're working on your pride and joy, they can also be used when you're trying to zero scopes in. Care for guns is often more important when you're not actually using the gun, but when you're storing it, make sure it's not in a damp place. I store mine in gun safes, but even in a dry centrally heated house, a gun safe fixed to an outside wall can get a certain amount of damp into it, and this can cause an issue with your guns, in which case use a small throwaway dehumidifier, which are available for around £1 each and will often last you between 4 and 6 months before they need changing. Again, it's more of a cheap prevention thing rather than needing to make costly repairs. You may not use a safe because it isn't a legal requirement on a sub 12 foot-pound gun in this country. You may simply keep them in a room at home. I would, however, suggest you keep them in a case to help prevent any unwanted knocks and bangs. And if the case isn't lockable, then maybe consider some form of trigger lock or locking system. Just one other thing, whilst I'm looking at cases and carry bags, don't forget to travel with your gun unloaded and the magazines and ammunition kept separately from the gun bag, just to be safe and keep plod happy. If you're going to be using the gun out and about for any length of time, it may be a good idea to get a sling fitted. That way you can not only relieve yourself of the strain of carrying a gun about all day, but it'll also keep the gun close to your body. Oh, and don't use it as a walking stick or a bum rest, as I've often seen, with the barrel rammed into the dirt. I know most of this is common sense, but again, if sense were common, we'd all have it. And I wouldn't have seen the number of issues that I have this year. Because, as I've said, all of the things that I've mentioned are real life issues that I've seen within the last 12 months. Another thing to keep an eye on is the power output of your gun, because this can be a sign of something going or starting to go wrong. It could be overpowered and will need attention to keep you on the right side of the law, or it could be underpowered and it's a sign that something is amiss. If a gun starts to go off target, it's also a sign that something is wrong. It could be a number of things, some of which are very simple to check out and possibly eliminate or find them to be the cause of the issue. Firstly, check the silencer. Is it still tight on the barrel or has it come slightly loose? Just that small amount of play can cause a clipping issue and the accuracy will be all over the place. It could be that you have caught something with the silencer and hopefully it's just damaged the silencer and not bent the barrel. To check this, remove the silencer and fire it without and see if the grouping improves. If not, then it could be something more serious, I'm afraid. And if you have knocked it, you could well have bent that all-important barrel. It could have lost accuracy because that barrel is now ready for cleaning. and I'll come to that a little later in the maintenance section. It could be something as simple as the gun, in the case of a PCP, needs more air in it. I wish I had £1 for every time someone has run their gun down to around 50 bar and still expecting it to shoot as consistently at feet per second as it was running at 200 bar. Keep an eye on your fill pressure gauge. If your gun is grouping well, but not on target, then the chances are you could have knocked your scope off zero and will need to re-zero it in. Or it could be that you haven't fitted it right. I've seen a scope sent back, and this is the one, because it wasn't working correctly, only to see the shooter had tightened the rings so hard on the tube it had bent the tube and squashed it. Wow. Not a lot of care taken there, and I don't know any amount of maintenance that will cure that particular faux pas. If you're thinking of storing your gun, then don't leave, such as a Springer, cocked. It will compress the spring and damage it. And if you're going to leave a PCP for any period of time, leave it with around 50 to 60 bar of pressure in it to help keep the seals in place but not overstress them. With CO2s, remove the cartridge. It will, likely as not, lose the CO2 over time anyway. Finally, in the care section of this programme is more of a don't do rather than a do. If you don't really have that much knowledge around guns, don't be tempted to play around with them too much. They are often under high tension or high pressure and they could bite you. Don't be tempted to start adjusting everything too much, as often they have been set to an optimum by the factory and your tinkering could knock it all out of kilter. One of the prime examples is trigger adjustment. If done incorrectly, this can result in the ineffectiveness of the safety and or the ability to cock the gun at all, as these are often all interlinked within the mechanism. All that lot out of the way, let's move on to what you can physically do to keep your gun in tip-top condition. Maintenance. Let's start with a simple one first, shall we? Cleaning the barrel. Some guns have barrels that are easier to clean than others. A break barrel Springer, for example, opens up to give excellent access to be able to clean it. Some fixed barrel guns are somewhat tighter, but most guns are best suited to cleaning with a pull-through kit. There are several types out there. This one is made and sold by Vector Air, and these are either bought on their own or as part of a kit. Let's take a look at how you should and shouldn't use one. Ideally, you want your gun on a secure position. As I said earlier, a specific gunsmith vice or maintenance centre is ideal. If your gun has a silencer, then ideally this wants to be removed to give you better access to the barrel itself. You will be working from the front. Now, it should go without saying to make sure the gun is unloaded and not cocked with any safety fully applied. As always, safety first. Then carefully guide the loop end of the pull-through down the barrel until it appears at the breech end. Then carefully pull it through slightly, enough to let you attach the cleaning pads. At this point, it's worth noting that the pull-through itself is not caliber specific, but the quantity of pads that you attach is. You want to loop through the end of the pull-through sufficient pads to get some resistance on the pull, but not enough to need Thor's strength to be able to pull it back up the barrel. Too few pads and it will be of little or no use at all. Once you've got the number correct and attached, which is usually established via trial and error, I'm afraid, then lightly cover the pads liberally with a light solvent oil and rust inhibitor. Don't use heavy or harsh solvents. It won't necessarily clean it better, and it's likely to damage your seals. Once you've done that, pull through and repeat until the pads are coming out pretty clean. Then finish off the process by pulling through a dry pad to remove any excess oils. This cleaning may need to be done more frequently on some guns than others, and usually a drop-off in accuracy starts to tell you it needs doing. You will become familiar with your gun's needs as you use it. Of course, it may be that all this cleaning also requires the barrel to be leaded in again a little. Certainly before optimum accuracy is achieved again. This is probably one of the simplest and yet most important maintenance tasks you could do with your gun. It's often a best practice to do this with a brand new gun, to be sure there is no excess oils in the barrel from manufacture. The pull-through is probably one of the most important pieces of kit you could have. The other method is to use a set of rods on the push-through. That is a more caliber-specific method, and if used incorrectly can sometimes do more harm than good to the barrel. But if you have an older gun that may have a little surface rust on the inside of the barrel, then using these is probably your best option. Ideally, you want to fit the wire brush attachment first to help clean the surface rust out of the barrel. Then use the soft mop attachment. All of these do screw into the end of the rods. And then once you've completed that stage, then go back to a final clean with the pull-through as we've already looked at. A couple of things here to remember is be careful not to damage the breech seal when using either method, as that could then need replacing. The other point is that a push rod system is also quite a useful piece of kit to have to use in unblocking any pellets that you may have jammed in your barrel. Remember what we said earlier in the care section? But be warned, getting 32 pellets out using one of these isn't easy and may finish up doing quite a lot of damage. Best to leave that to your gunsmith. Another method of cleaning the barrels is by using the tampons. Yes, you heard me correctly, but not the ones that you're thinking of. These are specifically made caliber specific felt pads that you load into the breech and then fire through the barrel. Again, remove the silencer before using them, because they're likely to leave bits inside your silencer. Oh, and don't think they're only soft so I'll shoot them at my mate. They will still leave the barrel at force, and it really isn't sensible or advisable to shoot them at people. A particularly important piece of maintenance is the external of the gun, a task that should be done more frequently than cleaning the barrel, really. It's about as simple as it gets, but it's often either not done at all or done incorrectly. All you need is a simple lint-free cloth and some airgun oil. Before you start this, just make sure your gun isn't covered in mud or grit or sand. If it is, then make sure this is carefully removed first, and this can be done using a damp cloth, because you will be replacing any moisture with the light oil after you've cleaned it. Drop into your cloth some gun oil. When your cloth is lightly coated, then simply rub it all over the gun to give a final water displacement and clean and light covering with protective oil. It doesn't need to be swimming in it, so that everything it comes into contact will give the wife a problem in trying to get the oil out of the washing. Just enough to give it a light coating. Once done, don't throw the cloth away, keep it and reuse it. It will build a nice level of lubricant in it and can be brought out each time to give the gun a final quick wipe over. From time to time, you will really need to remove the stock to be able to complete this process on the underside of the gun also. This is easily done on most guns by simply undoing a single bolt on the underside and carefully remove, then clean it. The refitting is simply the reverse. Take care to be sure everything is lined up correctly and don't cross-thread the bolt. So far, pretty simple, right? And jobs you can do if you take your time and be careful. Next up is protecting your ring. Well, your O-rings to be more specific. These are quite visible on your magazine, fill probe, bolt, etc. Rubber is a perishable material and is best protected with a light covering of silicone oil. Again, I said light covering, not drowning it in it. It's far better to use less and do it more frequently. This is also a good practice if you have CO2 powered rifles or pistols to help protect the ring and help keep a light seal. The oil is not suitable for metal to metal parts though. If you do, it will probably finish up damaging those parts. From here on, you're really starting to get to the more advanced level of maintenance, and unless you're comfortable with doing this, I would leave it up to your gunsmith and let them service your gun from time to time. Because this would include greasing the enclosed O-rings that are likely to be on the internals of the gun and using a grease that will give them harder wearing protection. Finally, the stocks. The materials stocks are made of can vary greatly, from plastics to polymers to wood or even laminate. With the plastic-based stocks, it's very simple to give them a wipe down using a lightly dampened cloth to remove any excess dirt and then dry off. With wooden and laminate stocks, a best practice is to remove the stock, wipe it down with a damp cloth, then leave it laying flat in a warm room until dry. Then refit it to the gun. Well, hopefully this little guide has been of some use and has probably opened your eyes to just how little care some people give their guns, just how easy it is to get it right and just how easy it is to get it wrong. If you're the kind of person who is comfortable taking things apart and can put them back together again, then you can go a little further than some others. But completing the simple tasks will help prolong the life of your gun and keep it in tip-top condition, which will keep it accurate and consistent. Hopefully you found this useful. If so, please, as always, give us the old thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit the notification alarm bell, and you can always continue the chat and comments on all the forums. Merchandise is available on the AAR site, and a big thank you as always to Vector Air for the cleaning kits and help in making this video. Well, that's it from me. I'm off to clean my guns. Stay safe and shoot safe, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.